Noisecast.
Noisecast in episode 30. Feels weird to say 30. There's already 30 Noisecast episodes, which is quite remarkable to think that when I began the podcast, the idea was that if I can get 5 episodes out, even that is a good success. But now we are already sitting at 30 episodes. It's a quite of achievement if I say so myself. But anyway, episode 30 is the first part of the Dead Door Unit interview that was conducted last month by Mikko and Jazzhand. The interview was done before any of the gigs of Dead Door Unit's Europe tour, and Finland had 3 Dead Door Unit gigs in Helsinki, Turku and Tampere. And the last episode of Noisecast was about that Dead Door Unit Turku gig. But nevertheless, this first part of the Dead Door Unit interview revolves around early influences, how he set up the tour in Europe, also lots of discussion about live activities in United States, but also kind of different aspects of live gigs in general. But anyway, here is the first part of the Dead Door Unit interview.
At the moment we are in Lahti, and there's myself and Mr. Jazzhand joining, and then who are you and why you are here?
I'm Ken. I do Dead Door Unit, and I have a label called French Market Press, and I'm here to play some shows and hopefully entertain the Europeans. I've heard them entertaining before, so we'll see.
You have 3 shows in Finland?
3, yeah. So tomorrow in Helsinki, and then Turku and Tampere.
And after that?
I fly to Sweden, and then to Leiden in the Netherlands, and Berlin to close it out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And this is your first time touring in Europe?
Yeah, first time touring in Europe. My family, my mom's side of the family is of German descent. So we have a lot of family over there, but I mean, I have never as an adult been over to Europe. So it'll be like the first time for everything.
This podcast originally started to report the Finnish noise scene. Mm-hmm. And it slightly expanded into artists who are actually visiting Finland, or if Mikko of Noisecast has been abroad, he has also interviewed people who he just met there. But usually we deal with people who came to Finland for some reason, and why you are doing 3 shows in Finland and then just a couple of other dates in other countries.
Yeah, some people get surprised by this fact, but for the past year, I've been living with Max Eastman, who I know loves the Finnish land, and I know he had been talking so much about it, and after kind of years of doing the American circuit, of touring so much, I'm a bit of a traveler by heart. I love traveling where I can, and I decided, like, fuck it. Like, I remember actually the kind of moment. There's the Tribe Tape studio up in our house, and I almost like kind of Kramer-esque burst through the door, and I was like, who do I contact to play Finland? and it was Jane from Atrofist, and so I sent him an email, and it really just came together. Like, you'll play Helsinki, then you play Turku, then you play Tampere, and I think from there was more of trying to figure out places nearby and people I had talked to before. So like for Leiden, I've known Jim from Gessling for a couple years at this point, and we had talked before about me playing in Leiden, so I hit him up, and that's how that came together. And then Sweden was almost like a byproduct of Jane getting the Finnish show set up. He was like, you could probably play over in Sweden right after too. And it kind of just, a lot of this stuff fell into place. I'm not a extensive planner, I should say, with as far as like shows. I know like what areas I want to go to, and the way that Max and other people had talked about Finland, it made me interested in seeing the area and seeing what could be offered. But since getting these shows together, I think I've been diving a little more into what you guys do here Noisewise, and I'm quite satisfied and very much looking forward to it.
Did you were going to play in Gothenburg, was it?
No, so Gothenburg was never on the table. It's Malmo I'm going to be playing.
Okay.
And this is part of the show thing, I suppose, is I think at this point in doing shows, I feel very averse to ask, like, and that was kind of, I guess, something to overcome when you're trying to play another country, is asking people for gigs, or being like, can you please book me? Like, this is my project. Can you please book me? Like, I do this. I did that all when I was first playing. And so when kind of talking about it, and figuring things out, I didn't think to do Gothenburg, mostly because I was like, I don't want to ask. Like, I know they have Longest Night over there, and like Eric and Dan put together shows, and I had just been like, I don't want to ask people. I don't want to, I feel weird. Like, I already feel weird asking people for shows, and guys who have been doing it for so long too. You're especially like, you wonder like, oh, who am I to go and ask for a show, sort of thing. But then I found out Max is going to be playing in Gothenburg actually, and I was like, fuck, I should have just hopped on that. Should have used my roommate privilege.
Yeah, in the Leiden they have a sort of name for putting out even small scale festivals. That there's a lot of noise activities happening in Leiden, and but it's they have their, at least if I'm not mistaken, the venue is something like an old industrial building, and almost resembling squat or something.
Yeah, see, this is another. I know they have big warehouse. I think Resistor is the name of the place. That's where I'll be playing. And actually, this is funny. This kind of is a testament to my short-sightedness in planning a little bit. Is I will be in Malmo probably for all of 12 to 16 hours, because I didn't realize that I did not realize that Copenhagen is like right next to Malmo. So I'm flying out of Malmo Municipal to get to Amsterdam, and the only available flight was at like 6 a.m. So I kind of screwed myself with that one. But I heard at Resistor there's beds in the upstairs, so I'll be probably sleeping a good portion of that day.
So at now you don't really have experience about touring in Europe, but you have a lot of experience playing in US. Do you have some sort of expectations how it's going to be different? Like I was watching some of the videos from New York show you had like a week ago, was it?
Yeah.
And it did seem slightly different than usually shows in Finland, but I don't know if I saw it from the like a right angle, so to say. But do you think that there's a difference in like how the shows are done in the US at the moment, or the places you are playing there compared to what Max has told you, for example?
If I can flip the question back, maybe to get some context, what did you see out of those videos that made you think it's a little different?
Yeah, there was it reminded more like sort of what is my idea of stories about American house shows. There's people sitting on sofa and next to somebody playing.
Oh,
but
yeah,
then I saw the other angle.
So let me tell you about so that angle, oh god. Yeah, so that angle is that was these group of kids. They have a label called New Jersey Musical Annihilation, and I've known them all since they were like teenagers, high school kids. In fact, one of them, one of the first.
They were still teenagers. To be
No,
exact.
they are not. They are 20. Technically, they are not teenagers
Technically,
anymore.
okay. Yeah.
They are technically verging over or crossing over, but no, I've known them since they were teenagers, and
They were still teenagers.
yeah, you okay?
No,
Yeah,
whatever you
probably.
say.
I mean, I do make jokes. I think I told one of them today. I was like, "Shut up! You're 12 years old. Stop." But no. In that case, they were like, we have to sit on the couch in front of Ken, like maybe as a psych out thing, or maybe like they just want the full like fist pumping thing. Okay, so with that in mind, though, yeah. So in the U.S., I guess what I've become comfortable with over time is the house show setting. Just for a bit of background and context, I grew up in New Jersey, and in New Jersey, there is the state university, Rutgers, and that's in New Brunswick, which has a long history of basement shows and house shows. And when I went to Rutgers, I started going to all these types of shows and eventually playing all these types of shows. There could be a whole podcast just talking about those types of shows, but in New Brunswick specifically. But with New Brunswick, I think I really learned how to hone in noise performance just in my college years. And so that's kind of what I become comfortable with. And I guess my expectation is a little, maybe somewhere in the middle, where I always hear Europe, they're like, oh, well, get prepared. I actually had my old boss this weekend. She said to me, she's like, get prepared to be treated like your art is worth something over in Europe. Get prepared for people to care about you. Because so there's that perception, but also at the same time, I know it's noise. The ceiling is the floor, so maybe it's a mixture of we have a good PA in some sort of warehouse or dingier setting or some bar or whatever, I'm at least expecting a good PA and very good noise to play on top of me.
Remember, like a week ago, we had this conversation back in New York that like people have been expecting your show for like months.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, can't be, can't be like.
Yes, and I yes, Jocko's right. Yeah, when you said that, I told him, I was like, no, people don't care. People don't.
No.
People are not interested. People are not interested. I do not believe that, and I think that comes from that basement thing of. There have been so many times where I'll be like, right before a show, like right before a set, the table's all set up, and I'm like, take off the coat or take off my hat, and I'm like, all right, let's just get this over with. Like, no one wants to see the noise act. No one wants to see the noise act play.
I remember one guy, shout out to Hannu, but he was like 7 or 8 months ago, like, Dead Door Unit is coming to Finland? Perhaps, I don't know, I can't say, but yeah. So yeah, people have been expecting.
Yeah, this is sort of a cultural difference maybe, that in Finland there wasn't similar basement show culture in the late 90s or early 2000s. Like America was booming in that type of shows. And Finland at the time was more about sort of tradition of normal music, like clubs and real venues. And I don't think any of the guys who were around at the time were thinking that we could just do it in the garage or somebody's living room or something like that. So even when it was sort of private, it wasn't that it was like a house party where nobody would care, but when eventually these kind of private shows started in maybe 2005, 6, about that, it was gatherings of sort of fanatics. So the basement show or bunker shows or something like that, it was always gathering of fanatics. So it was exactly opposite of like a home show where you would have just people partying or not caring, and the Finnish private shows were gatherings of people who actually cared.
Yes.
And this is a small country.
Yeah,
so there's always venues that are expecting like, please come here to play. So even though it's underground, it's still income for those venues.
So if I can interject, in America now it's almost hilarious in a way where I know people who make like they like to make jest of the fact of like, oh, watch how I'm about to they go to a show and it's like, oh, can the local band turn it down? I'm trying to have a conversation out here. Like they love making jests of like light of the fact of like, oh, I went to the show to hang out. I didn't come to see them. The music. But what you guys are saying about private shows, actually, I will say, Max and we've thrown a couple shows at our house, and it's great to hear you guys in that time we're doing in Finland. I will say definitely what we were probably inspired by when we've done these shows is kind of similar to what Ron Lassard would be doing in like his apartment upstairs with his private shows, where it was private, as in you are coming into our house. We do not want random people here. This is like, we're going to invite you over to watch us play these sets. And we've talked about doing a bit more of that since. But I remember like the first show, I think we literally had one person. We had one person watching us, which was Joe Wang from Outdoor Horse Shrine. He watched me, Max, and Fricker do sets, and in a way that kind of thing is almost it's almost humbling in a way to have it. I would say house shows overall are kind of a humbling experience, not just for the reason of you have the people who are not there to actually see you, but because the true freak fanatic people, they come to these shows and like you're in a basement, you're in someone's house, someone came to another person's house to stand and watch you in a very intimate setting, and I think the pressure to perform well dials a little bit, whereas in a venue I've had some bad experiences in venues just with like sound guys who are like they hear like an oscillator going and they're like, is that intentional? And you're like, and when you hear that question, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. But like in a basement, you know, because it's born out of necessity in the States for bands and artists to play, because in the US they don't give a shit really about a lot of underground stuff. A lot of these people who have the PA, they're more just like, oh, you're plugged in, there's sound, awesome. If it sounds good to you, go ahead. And even if in those moments, even if it sounds kind of like shit, you're like, you know what, if it sounds like shit, I gotta give the best performance through a shit PA that I possibly can. And I think it can kind of toughen you a little bit as a live performer.
Do you think in some cases artists do not necessarily benefit from having that kind of environment? But for example, Jazzhand, I can imagine that he could even play with a consumer level stereo system, and it would still work out if he would be playing tapes and like source tapes and making a mix or something. And I think Dead Duty unit has also potential to be very much successful with very limited equipment. But then when you think about something like Genocide Organ, that they require almost like a professional venue to make it happen. But I think this is different kind of expression.
Well, you mentioned Jazzhand and Dead Door unit here. I have to like mention that like even like with poor like instrument, like good chef makes a proper meal out of those, just like like two guys you mentioned here.
Well, I will say, I watched Jazzhand with that kind of
I was struggling.
No,
so
Jazzhand's set was very good. Don't listen to him.
I was struggling so bad.
Funny you bring up Genocide Organ and the specificities. Someone I thought of just recently who I saw last month, really? And I know who you know, is Eric Wood, Bastard Noise. I know his penchant for being very much like, what are the PA specs, brother? Like, you know, he won't play a venue if the PA is specific like that. But I think because of what I've had to go through with a lot of people who don't care about this stuff, or they have a crappy PA, or, you know, in some cases, like playing a show literally outside of a crack house with a practice amp, which I've done before. I feel like I feel like if anything, it's just taught me more to like adapt, like the sound can adapt to different formats. When I first got into noise, I was a little more like Eric, where I'd be like, noise should be like a crispy, clean thing. Like it should be clean, it should be pure, it should be harsh. But that last point, harsh, the definition of harsh is so extensive. Like, what is it? Like, what really is, like, you know, like, what is harsh noise? Just to think of something in terms of a Finnish artist, Hull, I think that's how you pronounce it, H-O-H, Hull? Hair is an artist I'd think of as like, that's harsh stuff, but it's very lo-fi. But on the other end of it,
so taste.
But on the other end of it, you have Bastard Noise and Merzbow, who are beyond harsh, but so crisp in quality that I think playing in basements and playing out of these crappy sound systems over the years, I've realized like oh, this definition of harsh noise is so expansive, and really I can learn to fit what I do into stuff, especially gear-wise, actually. Some people might say, and you guys can be the judge of it. I mean, you can definitely be the judge of it, because I brought the same setup that I used last week. Some people would say the setup I bring is very small and very limited. It's maybe 3 items, and I'm like, this is too much gear.
But that's all you need. I mean, why would you bring like big orchestra? I mean,
I know.
they are like needs for that too. But like, if you can make it happen with 2 or 3 ingredients, like, come on,
That's what I think. Yeah, no, that's what I think. It's funny. One of the show's promos. Actually, it's the show for Leiden that I'm playing next week. Jim, I guess, found a really old video of me playing, and it's like me with a synthesizer, like five or 6 pedals, a tape player, another mixer just for feedback, and I was just thinking to myself, like, oh, Jesus Christ, that's so much gear. Why did I ever use this much gear? Oh, and a shopping cart with scrap metal in it. I was like, why did I do all of that back in the day? Like, I'm doing so much with so little now. And
Filling all the boxes, like synth, got it.
yeah.
Junk, got it.
The drone synth is here.
Yeah.
The pedal, the distorted contact mic is here. Yep. So yeah, I think at this point I've become kind of like a I guess, to circle way back to the original point of my feeling is like, over here you guys could give me any PA, you could give me a practice amp and I'll play a set, and I would hope it would be good, because I think at this point I'm like, I'll just play out of anything or do anything. There could be no PA, just give me some scrap metal and I'll think of something to do.
People would go bonkers, but I think we're going to give you a very good PA.
Okay.
At least at some shows. I don't know.
Saturdays will be like...
Yeah. But there has been a sort of... I was recently reading the theory how some of the like young guys or new guys, not necessarily young, but they are really good when they first start, and then they maybe start suck at some point. And there's a certain amount of... Laitako lisää? There was like the certain amount of first ideas when you only have like the one really good pedal, contact mic and something, and the result is almost like automatically excellent. But when they have sort of done it and I need to expand my expression, and the sort of next level becomes a little bit challenging. And the early part, when they only focus on something that will be instantly good, it will usually make like an early discography or early performances somehow having more impact. And as you mentioned, that you would only bring a couple of things, but it might be also that sort of for artistic reasons, one of the main points of creativity might be the limitation that you realize that, okay, I don't need to drench my sound into this like supposedly nice gear, but I will do with a like overdrive, mixer, possibly microphone, couple of other things, and then it might be sounding really excellent with any PA. Yeah. And as soon as you start to implement like complexity, then it has other requirements that when it starts to work out, there will be new challenges and like ability to have a restraint might be like a very creative. And I think you mentioned in a previous interview that there was a moment when you kind of finally figured out, I was like, okay, now I'm a good noisemaker.
yeah.
So are you standing still with the statement that, or do you think that now you finally got it, what it is to be a good noisemaker? For releases or live? Is it a different thing than for like a live or studio thing?
I think I think the live kind of came a little sooner than the studio. Like, I think live I figured out to a degree that noise and just the live show in general is like entertainment for some. Just as much as like, and when I say that, it's like, I'm not saying people should default to like the easiest tricks to do in the book as far as like noise, but some people, like for some people, they really want out of a live performance because they're, you're going to pay for a show, you want a good time. Some people just want a good time. So I think in the live setting I figured out like quickly, like, okay, this is what people are kind of reacting to the best, or like they're reacting to the most in the stuff that I was doing. But I think when I said that, I was talking more about on the recorded end, because after a certain point, I kind of realized that, or not realized, but I came to my conclusion about my work is it was very middling. It's very much, it wouldn't be stuff that I would buy on a cassette or anything like that. And I was kind of getting I'd get a little down about it. And so that period where I figured out how to really make a good noise recording would be around the time I was still living with my dad at the time, and I had a massive setup in his basement where I would record like every day. It was ritual. Come home. It doesn't matter if I'm like working or working twice in a day. I'd come home and record something every single day because I wanted to get into the groove of artists, like kind of get into the groove of artists that I looked up to where they were kind of living and breathing noise as an extension of themselves, which I don't think I was doing prior to that point. And when I finally busted out what I think was the first few releases on French Market Press, it was like, okay, I'm fine. Like, this is a sound. Like, this is not just a sound. Like, I'm not just listening to this to make sure, like, like a spec check to be like, okay, it sounds good, whatever, pass it along. It was more of like, I would listen to this on my own time over and over. And that's when I kind of came to it. But more so in the modern, where I'm at with stuff right now, I would say you know what? Fuck it. Yeah, I'd say I'm good at what I do. Like, I know what I do, and I know what's good about it. And I know it's not going to appeal to everyone. I think at one point in time I wanted to be... I think I had an idea of, like, someone like Merzbow can kind of reach across all aisles and be like, everyone has one Merzbow thing. They're like, that's good. And if they say they don't, then I really question them. Or I question why they would be saying that. But I thought at one point maybe, hey, that could be like something I do where there's one thing that people would like out of what I do. But I think letting go of that, now I've kind of realized, like, this is what I do. This is how I can then evolve what I do naturally, as opposed to being like changing things radically across releases. And I think right now I'd say, I make good noise, and for what I do. And it can kind of change as it naturally feels.
You definitely do good noise. But do you still feel like that you have to like win the crowd over, or you came? You said that people come to shows to be entertained.
Yeah.
But do you still feel like you have to win the crowd over, or give them something like to be entertained, or could it be that like they can fucking entertain themselves and you just like show them like this is what I do. If you like it, it's great. If you don't, then
No,
move
I
on.
don't. Yeah, I don't think I have any sort of. I don't think I have any sort of desire to entertain what I do, people with what I do. I think I've become maybe, but it's going to be different in Europe. It's going to be different in Europe because
Also.
because I stay in the stateside, you kind of have an idea of what people's tastes are and what they like when you look at a scene. And I would say I'm not maybe I'm not everyone's taste, and that's okay. The fact I have a show there is fine. It means at least one person liked me enough to be like, let's do this show for him. And if other people follow suit, that's great. And if they don't, I don't really care, because as long as I'm as long as I found entertainment out of it, I think a recent like revelation of noise that I had, just through like active listening, you always find something new that you're kind of impressed by. I was listening to a cock ESP tape at a friend's house called Victoria's Anal Secret, and I had a revelation with it where it's a C60, but maybe 10 minutes of it are entertaining. Like 10 minutes are like, fuck yeah, like harsh noise, and then the other 50 minutes it's just like kind of middle, like kind of the meandering, the build up to it, the background sound, if you would. And I think I've kind of realized recently, like, noise doesn't have to be all the fist pump. Like, a performance doesn't have to be all the time fist pumping.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, like all of this.
The meandering they're expecting.
Yeah.
So why would like shake them a little bit and give them something else?
Yeah, I think, like, noise and interests in other things that I have kind of like, I don't want to speak too much on other like non-noise things. Like having an interest in hiking, I realized like the joy of hiking is the journey, not just the destination, not that beautiful overlook, but also the journey that you take to get there. And I like recently kind of adopted a similar thing with noise of like, you want a good moment, it has to build up to it. It can't be all like serotonin boosting, like very like joy, like victorious noise fist pump thing. Like you have to get there naturally.
And in this country, hiking and noise go very much hand in hand.
Max is very much into some of the old noise things, and I think the difference between old noise and new noise is one of the main differences, I would say, is that the old noise used to be hermits, like the guys alone, and even the notion of noise live show is a little bit later. And when some of the like a C60 noise tapes came, I think notion of being entertained is quite alien to era of 80s and 90s. Like, what is the entertainment? Why should we really be excited? And there's something else happening when you are making and when you are actually listening for the noise tape, and sort of instant gratification has not been very important in noise until it became something that people pay money. Well, they collected before, but it's changed it into something else. But I think in some ways noise earlier, when it wasn't collectible and it wasn't something to be entertained, there was some other reasons to listen it's hard to explain why people would be listening C60 or C90 or something when there's no exciting moments.
Do you mean it like more artistic way to be like experiencing the noise, or more like as an full experience? Like I bought this item of record and then I go home and experience it the way I do best.
I think there was a lot of things that you didn't have any guidelines how to react on something.
So maybe the later one.
Yeah, and you would get something, and it would be almost like you would get a magazine, and you don't know how to really react on collage. Well, how should you feel about it? It's not like a party, and it's not necessary enjoyment, but it's like, okay, let's flip through this. And noise might have been, in some cases, at least I have gone through a lot of stuff that is not entertaining.
Yeah.
But I'm still listening through, and many times, and it has other values. The noise wouldn't necessarily have to be entertaining.
Yeah.
And I think in a way the sort of private live show allows also this element.
Yeah.
That if you're playing in a bar or a venue, I think the space is designed to be entertaining or good time.
It is. No, it certainly is. I think I actually get a lot of anxiety and nerves about, like, so I played a show recently. It was playing with like a band, and I do like doing those occasionally just for the sake of, like, I can invite my friends who are not privy to noise to come see a band, because they can be like, okay, like, I like metal music or I like punk music.
Yeah.
Let me come see this band play, and Ken's gonna open the show, and that'll be great. But I get a lot of nerves in that, because I do kind of feel a heightened sense of I have to entertain. I have to entertain someone, because they paid $15, whatever. I have to kind of, like, not just put a show on the stage, but I have to then do this. But I try to shy more away from that, make it a very occasional thing more, because truthfully, where my heart rests now is, like, not making noise for the sake of entertainment, but it's more about making noise as just an extension of myself and my daily habits and my daily, like, observations. I think that's the more natural way to do things, and with some more recent Dead Door stuff, there's definitely moments where I'm like, oh, rough, like like, this is rough to listen to, this is really rough sound, this is like not entertaining sound, but it doesn't really matter if it's entertaining or not. It's more of, like, this is just an extension of what happened. There are even things I've done not under Dead Door, under projects I cannot disclose at this time, where I've done intentionally the worst things imaginable that I can on a record. Like, I think as noise people, we know how to do things. We know how to do things the quote-unquote right way. And I've tried to challenge myself before, being like, what if I did something the wrong way the entire time? And then it picks up with the strangest audiences, because it's like, there's stuff beyond just the noise. There's the visual, where they're like, oh yes, this is very good. Like, this is very up my alley in terms of aesthetically what I like. It's funny, because noise-wise, I'm like, this is some of the most garbage shit I have ever recorded, and you're eating it up for some reason. You can never really guess, like, what people want, but for the most part, people at least where I'm around, They need the gratification to burst out, and I can't deliver on that front. I need to I guess I believe more of patience in listening. Like you said, going back to stuff. Maybe the first time it didn't click. The second time, maybe some things would click. The third time, it might be like one of your favorite records. Trying to think of like an example of something like that, the one of my favorite records ever is the K2 Ground Fault, and In the Monotonous Flowers. And I remember the first time I heard it, a lot of my perception of K2 was scrap metal, stereo cutting, and then you hear this stuff where like, what are these, what's this, like, what sounds like a children's toy going off, or like some sort of like weird sped up tape effect of people talking, and you're like, what is this, like, I don't know about this. But then you go back to it because you spent money on the disc, so you got to try it before you're definitively like, this is not for me. And with that one in particular, I started realizing like these sounds he's putting together, I was like, it doesn't have to be harsh. It doesn't have to be it doesn't all have to be like entertaining. These awkward gaps in the middle of things are like, they make you what's the word? They make you all the more grateful for the more enjoyable stuff that comes after. And at this point with that disc, like something like that, like through enough repeated listens, I'm like, it went from being like, this disc is boring to, this is one of the best things I've ever heard, and I will defend that to the grave.
We're talking about with Barrett. You know Barrett?
Yeah, Barrett, yeah.
We're talking about Barrett with this, like, about this, that, like, you have to pull those motherfuckers through something.
Yes.
Like, give them some challenge, like, to get to the good stuff, you have to, like, understand the path that leads to it.
It's funny,
like, if you give them, like, candy, it probably tastes sweet at first, but, like, the meal is coming, just have to wait. It's going to take an hour or two, but, like, it's coming, motherfucker.
Well, actually, to relate to was kind of my time so far, something like Barrett's work is almost
Super
like
good.
Yeah, it's super good. Or like it's almost akin to being in a sauna of sort. When I first stepped into the sauna this morning, I was like, my lungs were like dying. I was like, oh shit, like I can't stay in here for more than 2 minutes. But then by the end of it, I was like, you get in this rhythm of like, okay, I'm here with a record. I'm here like taking it in. I'm hearing the intricacies now. I'm hearing what was put behind it. And that's really fun. Like that's really fun stuff to imagine. Like, how did they do this? If I can, for a second, like, I think that kind of relates back to, and this is not stuff I've talked about, as like early childhood memories of like the imagination kind of making me fall deeper into music and eventually noise. My first ever guitar teacher taught me, he was showing me that Led Zeppelin song In the Evening, and if you know the song, the solo starts like this very like kind of sound, and he told this story that Jimmy Page dropped his guitar in the studio, and that's what that sound is. And that's kind of been one of those moments where, curiously listening to music now, I'm like, how the fuck did they make that sound? Like, how the fuck did that happen? And I think if you're just looking for like to be entertained the entire time, you're not gonna sit back and think about things as you're not gonna think about stuff as on that level if what you want is just kind of a dopamine rush the whole time.
Some of the other early guitar heroes like Jimi Hendrix. He had some pieces that were almost like a Solomania type of guitar noise.
Oh my god, yeah.
But it's at the time it was just something weird, but not necessarily associating it as a type of music. It was just something very strange happening.
What's funny with that stuff, and Hendrix never lived long enough to see it happen, is a lot of these guys, they say in interviews is like, oh, it sounds that way because that's all we had available at the time. And then some other dickhead like Stevie Ray Vaughan comes along and like perfects the sound, or like they do like a more of a studio perfect rendition of some old song, and then that old guitarist will be like, oh, you know what? That's what I wanted to do. Let me make like an update. Like, let me update my sound, and then it completely kills it. It's like, because now like the gear, quote unquote, is available. I guess like a noise equivalent would be like Pain Jerk, where he's like, I made the sound, or at least I heard the story of. I don't want to spread misinformation about Pain Jerk, but I heard he's kind of one of these people where it's like, it's all the stuff available at the time. And what he's doing now is more in the line of like what he wanted to do. And it's like these capabilities are kind of it's the capabilities that make you more interesting. Like, what can you do with your set stuff that you have? When you kind of find like the right gear or whatever to figure stuff out, it almost feels like it can be boring in a way. I was talking with a coworker recently. He got one of those big Octatracks, those samplers. I wouldn't have any idea of how to use it, but if I did, I think it would kind of replace the need for a 4-track cassette or like my recording styles, and I think at that point maybe some of the spark would be lost out of making noise, just for having something that can do everything you want to do. It can, yeah.
This crosses something like between what Mikko was saying earlier, what's the material, what you do in your early careers, is that in US, actually this is something that I've been talking with Murmur quite a bit, Ross, is in Canada and US you find all this gear quite cheaply from like thrift stores. In Finland we don't have that. I'm not sure about the rest of the Europe, but at least in Finland you get like old cassette decks and that's all. But in the US you get like all this like electric gear, and you find it like $20 you get like 3 pieces of something. Like, god damn, you spoiled. God damn.
Yeah, we're definitely spoiled in that regard, just because there was a time where I had a shit ton of gear. If you want to get really mad, an MS-20, which I know a lot of people would love to have as a synthesizer, was given to me for free a couple of years ago.
Nice. How much did you pay for yours?
Not much. It was at the time. It was fairly affordable. I mean, it's the original one.
Nowadays, the prices are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, some guy gave it gave me it for free, and I think because we have access to so much, and because we can because gear can kind of lend its way to, because there is an easy way out with gear in terms of digital workstations or these things, you kind of don't see people venturing as much or pushing the limits of their stuff. Whereas with me, it's like I want to kind of be as much of a Luddite as I can with my recording and my material, because I don't want to learn too much. I think it's good to have some limitations sound-wise to what you're learning and figuring out what to do. Like, and just the fact of like, the less you know, I think just the more entertaining it can be. Like, if I knew how to take a little bit of scrap metal and pitch it up and distort it which way and like make 4 different unique tracks out of the same sound, like, yeah, that's cool to describe to someone, but it's not as fun as like sitting down next to a piece of scrap, like multiple pieces of scrap metal with a cassette or a Walkman and just being like like recording nonsense like that. There's a joy to that just can't be matched.
There's this level of being experimental in a way that you don't know exactly what is going to happen. And I think a lot of gear is designed to be that you know what you are going to aim for. You buy something and you can say that it's experimental to the certain level, but it's still like you have an idea and you are sort of recreating your idea. But there was a moment in Noise when equipment that you had was unpredictable in a way that outcome of the release wasn't really something you sort of could predict. And I remember when like Richard Ramirez was talking about some of the early tapes, and it didn't have any pedals, it didn't have any 4-trackers or synthesizers. It would involve something like I think it was like a granny had some sort of stereo system where was turntable, tape deck, and speakers, and somehow misusing the stereo system, you would have this result that became some of the classic tapes, and it was only like consumer electronics misused, and by accident you came up with classic Noise tape.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to think about. It's funny you bring up Ramirez too, because I've been recently revisiting some of that Black Leather Jesus stuff from the 90s, and there's the tape Crossburnt in specifically where there's a moment on the B-side where there is a slowed down recording of Black by Pearl Jam playing. I know this because I've been listening to Pearl Jam as long as I've been going through my dad's record collection. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, like, how could this be? Like, how could be this moment? But in reality, it is just like, it's consumer grade electronics just being used in a way that they're not supposed to be used. And I think that there's more of an excitement to that because of the unpredictability and the fact that this thing could end. Like, you could get this really good sound and it could just end in 2 seconds, and you have these 2 seconds and that's it. Another point with that kind of unpredictability that I've kind of learned to embrace over time is in terms of like editing on a computer. I'm really bad at it. I don't know if either of you guys, how much editing on a computer you might do, but there's that kind of clicking sound, that like that pop when you cut between recordings. That sound infuriates me to no fucking end. So when I'm trying to edit out maybe a part that I'd see as stock or something like that, it's a little bit annoying when you can't get the cut right, and then it's you kind of have to accept that maybe the imperfect moment that you used, it's just going to have to stay there because it'll lead to something better. Yeah. But if you cut it, it's going to sound worse. You might as well let things flow naturally. Kind of what I'd like to imagine with like the BOJ stuff is like, things are just happening naturally on those tracks, and there's no pedal to kind of save you and get you into that.
Those are like that like magic of like putting out releases that you get the idea that no, he didn't edit anything. It's just like pure as it is. But usually it ain't. Or if it doesn't, we never know. I mean, it might be that way that he edit like basically like, all like only like the beginning and ending, and that's all. Or he might did like whole lot of editing, but we will never know. So. But yeah, I understand your point about like editing between those, like you get the pop, like when the sound levels doesn't match.
Yeah, I'm kind of amazed by.
Yeah, I hate that.
I think too, like a part of what I do is I've gotten more collaborative in recent years with people who will make me tapes. One person in particular, I think, kind of carries on that Ramirez sort of attitude, who we've been talking about a bit, is Henry Mallard, where he will send me, I think, I wouldn't be surprised if I have like 20 source tapes at this point of his stuff, and you just have to sit through these jams where it's like, it's kind of like, okay, it's this mixer feedback's going on for a little too long. But eventually, you'll hear this genius noise, and it's like, to me, that feels worth it, because this is just someone as much as, like, I'd rather someone like Henry who takes the time to kind of explore the setup they're using, rather than someone who's just like, here's my table of modular synth and like sampler, and I've practice the recording and all that. It's like, fuck that. Leave it. Like, life itself is not perfect. Let some imperfections sneak in.
There's a lot of documentation about noise, and there's a lot of short-term documentation about noise, and it might give an emphasis on sort of highlights of things, that when you have like 30 seconds of Madonna live, it might be the whole show in that, but it might be also that it's a sort of a limited experience of noise when you have as we talked about, like a highlight or sort of best of noise. And with this documentation, I think maybe Instagram might be the most popular format for noise documentation, and it's giving sort of not necessarily accurate description of what noise is, and some argue that there's noise is losing the mythical level when you see something, and I don't fully agree. I see the point, but for example, live show, if you see a 15 seconds clip of the live show, does it constitute as a single live show? How do you feel about being, for example, documented, or do you follow the documentation of live noise or noise in general?
I was just like thinking, like same way you brought up the like last week's show we did in New York, that you saw the Instagram clip. I mean, I wouldn't say that noise isn't like safe from social media. I mean, it's victim to it the same way as any other genre.
There's fucking people getting thousands of likes because of a noise meme that's not accurate.
And even though you're like outside of that, in some way, I mean, still can affect you in that way. Like shorter like the focus span of like people are like having nowadays, even like mostly of the young dudes. It's challenging for us, like who make like big albums or like, as we mentioned like earlier, like things that like need or demand like longer focus span than like 15 seconds.
Yeah. For example, with the Jazzhand, your live shows,
which I haven't done much because I enjoy it.
Yeah, but there's a handful of those, and they are not really something that you would have a circle pit and people going
Why
nuts
not?
over it. But it's more like having your own fun,
Yeah.
and there is interaction in certain ways, but it's also more like tape collage happening in front of audience.
Yep.
And it reminds more of home recording in front of audience instead of being a performer.
I mean, what we were talking earlier, like, I mean, I'm not a like entertainer. I do this for myself, and I do this as I want it to be, and it's like firstly for myself. If you enjoy it, that's good. If you don't, I don't care. And like those rare performances I do, which I don't enjoy, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, if you like it, it's nice, but like, it's not for you. It's for the sake of performance. It's not even for myself.
I think there's. I think with the documentation of noise, I tend to agree more with you. I understand the place for entertainment. Mm-hmm. I grew up doing like theater and all of that jazz, and I understand, like, I think there's kind of an empowering thing about that, which as much as like you are entertaining an audience in a theatrical setting, at least for someone like me, it was always like I'm really putting myself out in a way that's kind of deeply uncomfortable for me, and it's kind of pushing me past that uncomfortableness to do that, but to get to the point of documenting it, I do like the fact that I kind of like being a little coy or a little secretive with some things. I like being able, like, I don't know, like, I don't want to see how the sausage is made in so many cases. Right? I don't want to see every aspect of anyone's life or output. I'm sure there's stuff from Jazzhand and Grunt that I will never hear in my life, and there's something that's fine about that because it doesn't maybe it just wasn't, maybe it was a time and a place that I just wasn't meant to be in, and I think people have to accept that more of, like, you see the Instagram clip for like 15 seconds, and people, they might demand the live tape. For me, it's like, no, you don't get everything. You shouldn't have everything. Documentation is good for getting the larger ideas across, but if you really care enough, you as a person, you'll do the work to go out and find these things. It's about any sort of subculture or fascination that people will get into. Like, it's no different than like figuring out like sports stats or something. You want that stuff. You want that deeper knowledge. Go and get into that yourself. It shouldn't be hand-fed to everyone who has kind of a passing interest in it.
But it also, for like the audience member, they have to accept that they are not going to get like the 100% understanding of what is going on. I mean, it's also like for the artist itself, that like him or herself, that they cannot like word or write it down like what is the meaning of this. They might have the vision for it, but they cannot like put it out on like understanding format, like this the like the goal that I'm going through or towards I'm going through. You might get it, you might not, and you have to accept like that's how it's going to be.
Well, if I asked either of you how, you could say to me like, this is the point of X release. If I was like, well, how did you reach that conclusion? We could be here all day talking about why we're doing the things we do, and that just seems like a fruitless and boring thing because
But it is boring.
it is.
We just have to accept that.
Yeah, absolutely, and life.
Or it might be boring to you, or it might be boring to them. But
Yeah, but
that's
it's
how it is.
It is, yeah, that is how it is, and you got to kind of like accept. I think maybe in terms of like because nowadays with social media we have such an easy access to learning about everything
Yep.
that we want. All of a sudden, the expectation is you should know everything.
Or at least we think about learning is if we see a clip of 15 seconds that we know something about it.
Yes,
we
exactly.
Don't, we
And
only
you
know
don't.
we only know 15 seconds
And-
about it, but you still have to put your like 10,000 hours to it
Yes.
before you can say that I truly know it.
Absolutely, and this is a good time for me to just say real quick, for any of my friends who I might send this to listen to, or like my parents, if you send me a meme about noise, something, I'm more like noise, like, oh, this is the average noise show, or this is what noise sounds like. That's not it. And it's kind of annoying for you to be like, it resonated this much where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna send this to Ken because he's definitely gonna validate my laughing that I had towards this. It's like, no, you don't understand it, and they get annoyed by that. But
we also have to understand that.
yeah,
I mean, it's good idea for them, but
It is- it
we
is-
just have to like eat it and go like, okay,
yeah,
you had your laugh, good. We move forward.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm one of the guys who's actually documenting quite extensively
Sure.
things. So there's a good way of documenting, and then there's a unnecessary way of documenting, I would say. There's like a couple of different things, and back in the day, the documentation of even somebody going on touring would be very influential. Like you think about Mason Jones going to tour in Japan, writing about it in Onkaku Otaku magazine, and you would learn about Japanese noise in very different way than you would learn about listening to tapes, and then you would watch some of the VHS tapes, and you would learn something very unique compared to cassette releases, and each format would have something to offer, but as I mentioned that I have two ideas about it, and I think the mythicality what people sometimes want from noise, that we shouldn't document about noise, that it loses the mythical quality. That is related to stuff that doesn't have the mythical quality itself. But there's a lot of stuff when you document it, it doesn't really lose the mythical quality because the stuff itself is in entirely different level. And still today, when you watch some, not necessarily even old, whatever documentation of something real, it's almost like getting shivers, like, damn. And it's something that happened somewhere, even might be yesterday, might be 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but the documentation gives you something idea that there is a potential for something more in noise. That if somebody would have been giving us advices back in the 90s, for example, that like we would get some how to do things, it would have been very nice.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like 10 years ago, I would have been grateful if someone documented things a little better. That would have been nice, but I think what you're doing with documentation of noise, yeah, I don't think everything should be a mystery per se, just because like just based from my own experience, like I didn't know what a contact mic was until I was into it for like a couple years. I didn't realize what that was, and like even that basic information can be really nice. Or like, one of the most famous documentations of noise would be like Emile Bolio's America's Greatest Noise. And I know from your personal experience, you probably saw Ron up close with his his whole setup, so you know what he was doing. But for people like that, for people like me, like, we probably, who are past that time, we probably can't imagine what someone like that is doing as far as like, well, how do you make sounds like that? Like, I guess basic information is nice to know, is what I'm saying. Like, this is how you can go about making noise. It's like, because everyone's got to start at a certain point. You don't start playing, you don't go into playing guitar being like, I'm going to write my own songs. You go into playing guitar learning how to play like Black Sabbath or Nirvana, just to figure out like the basics of, and I think that stuff is good to know, or like it's good to know in something, to speak on the more obscure, the fringe with noise. It's good to know that like scenes are going on abroad, and that for a very long time people have been trading cassettes, and this is how things should go.
That's like double-bladed sword, and like the human evolution works that way, that like this generation continues where the like previous one ended. But in noise or artistic way, does it work that way, or is it like we have to pay our dues, like start from the same start line that the previous generation, for example, started, like, or does it like evolve that way?
I don't think there's a right answer.
Yeah,
I think music has become so. I think music and just like the creation of it has become so messy over time that you can get into noise in a number of ways. But I do think it's important to figure out eventually of like these have been the standard practices of noise for X amount of years, and like this is a lineage that gets to be made. I don't fault people if maybe they found noise through like Instagram or Facebook or whatever have you. But if you're going to be really self-deprecating about it and be like, oh, well, it's supposed to suck, it's noise, then you're not really... It shows a lack of trying to understand what it's all about. And I think the entry point doesn't matter so long as you eventually come around to the fact of like, this is a thing that's worth making tapes about, doing shows about, documenting on a serious level. I think all of that stuff is important to take into consideration, as opposed to like the documentation of it just being like a joke on the internet, or like...
And at some point, we old farts, you are at a high age of 30. I'm 37, and Mikko, what are you? 60? 70? At some point, we have to accept that the generation after us came into noise through Instagram. Or TikTok even.
Yeah.
But at some point, we have to just like... Sure. I don't know. We don't have to accept it, but that's how it's going to be. That's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Even though we would like it or not.
Back in the days when dinosaurs and Mikko roamed the earth, it was a little different. But I get like, I'm kind of happy to be part of, at least like, in a way I am glad that my interest in noise and music came at a very organic level. When I was a kid, there was a record store in town over from me called Jack's Music, and there was a man who was working in the back of the store. His name was Tim Cronin. He was in a band called Monster Magnet. He was the original vocalist and drummer, but he had, in that time, he had gone to work in this record store, and I remember calling into that store a lot as a kid. I would sneak in. I would actually, because my parents didn't really like me going into the towns over, funny enough, but I would call into the store and ask them if they had like new record by such and such, if they could hold a copy for me. But eventually one day I was like, do you have Neurosis Through Silver and Blood available? And when I pulled up to the store to grab a copy of Through Silver and Blood, Tim was like, not every 13-year-old is asking for Neurosis, and you should listen. If you really like this, I have this record for you, and, it's like The Birthday Party or Swans, Filth, and I'm glad in that sense that I got it through human interaction, because, it's one thing.
Sound bills are on the table.
Perfect.
It's getting serious now.
It's very serious.
It's getting serious now.
It's one thing. I think it's one thing to be introduced to something through your social media, but like kind of getting like a human perspective, or like making that social interaction. Like you don't just get the music. You don't just get the one-time hit that you would from like a video on Instagram or something like that. You get someone that you can constantly return to and constantly figure out. Like years later, I remember I would still, up until, sadly he passed last year, I would go into this music store to see Tim, and he would be like, hey, I know you like Triple R, actually. Back in the 80s, I used to order from this. I have a 7-inch. Here, you should have this. It's like the gift that keeps on giving through human interaction. Just like, I think that in itself is even like documentation of like passing along to the next generation. You can accept that the next generation got into something a very different way than you. And I accept that even I was lucky to get into kind of a natural way of like, oh, you figure out, you buy a record because the cover looks cool. But you can, I think human interaction is a very key part of this whole documentation thing, because it's something that's continual and it's going to keep giving. And,
as I mentioned earlier, that there's some people recently, well, all throughout the years have mentioned that the musicality disappeared. And when I first experienced industrial noise was through Einturchen and Neubauten. And that was something that I just found out that, okay, I came across with an LP from library, and I didn't know what it was, but I just saw that there's like a shopping cart mic'd, and I was like, what is this? And then I took it from the library, and then I told an older friend there was this band, and he actually gave me a VHS tape. Like, check out this. And there was a video of Einturchen and Neubauten. And then there was because it was copied video, there was a Swans 80s live performance. And there was like 2 drummers, heavy bass noise, and I had no idea, there's obviously no information. And I was like, what is this band with 2 drummers? And my friend was almost resentful, for like, You don't know swans? What the fuck? And I was, well, I'm 15, so what the fuck? And it's like early 90s, so there's no internet, and you don't know shit. But then the videos or documentations didn't spoil anything. They were actually sort of adding to the mystery of something. And I think in case of noise, sometimes people think that giving out information about gear would give something out, but I would say that if somebody, I'm quite avid giving information about gear, and even if anybody would have my gear, I don't think they would do the same thing. And I think in case of dead door unit, when you keep it very simple, it's not really about the gear, it's about something else.
It's about, I mean, in my own case, it's definitely about me and how I approach using the gear. I think maybe what I use could be imposing maybe to some in the fact of like right now I'm not really using pedals at all, or some of those kind of like those tricks that can get you something really quick. And I think I'm not anti-information. I'm just maybe more so like maybe I wish that with people maybe their imagination would run a little bit more upon being given the information. You mentioned swans. I remember being 13 when I heard swans filth for the first time. How I heard filth, I don't remember. But I remember the first thought in my head was like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is what I wanted to find. But how do they do this? Guitar doesn't make this sound. Drums don't normally sound like this. Like, a bass, like, what fucking tuning is the bass in? Like, all of this stuff. And not having the answer. You're being given the information. And then even watching them play live, you're still like, how is his guitar sounding like this? Are you like, what is this? I don't know how 2 drums on stage can work. You're trying to figure out with the best of your limited capabilities, because you're not Swans and you're not a professional touring band, how to do this thing. And I guess in my case, maybe like, you could look at my table and be like, yeah, he's got a bunch of tapes and stuff like that. But you don't know what's on the tapes. You don't know how I got the tapes. You don't know how I recorded anything on them. You might see a synthesizer, but it's not like some commercial grade synth. You're not going to figure out how these things work without someone sitting you down and explaining. So I think like presenting, you can present a live set all you want, but I think there should be a limitation for how much you give away. I think it's good for someone to at least know the gear exists. I wish I would have had that. But then it's up to them to figure out what they like about it. And even maybe if they don't like it at all, maybe they don't like it and they'll be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna, it wasn't for me. But I think that experience is good to have, because I've had many a pedal where I've been like, this thing sucks, and I am now going to sell it because, but it might work for someone else.
I heard criticism about your new CD and why there's music on the CD. And there's a clip of music, and I wasn't irritated, but I was actually listening other CD that was a Ralph Wachowski from Germany, and he made a CD that is basically noise. It's like electroacoustic music, and he was using music that was thrash metal on a CD. And when you are listening noise CD that has thrash metal, then you're like, well.
Huh?
And Jazzhand, he's using
Fuck that
jazz.
guy. Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
I haven't been using jazz. Whoever says that goes fuck himself.
But in live situation, I
No,
think,
in not even live situation.
yeah.
Oh,
So-
you mean the saxophone?
Yeah.
It wasn't jazz. Even though it was saxophone, it was recorded in Beijing, China.
Jazz.
Nothing to do with jazz.
But
So
there is
fuck
like this distinction of what is noise, and then when you have music applied to noise, it can be really annoying. I know a lot of people who are annoyed about jazz, and the jazz hand might be objecting about this thing, but I heard some guys were annoyed about your new album having music clips. So, so what's up with the music
The
clips?
music? Well, to the people who are annoyed by the music, let me just say that getting that music clip, I know what you're talking about, was almost as hard as getting some good noise to come forward. Because, and I'm going to get familial again about this, that music comes from a mixtape that my dad made for himself as a teenager in the summer of 1977 or 8. It is a sample of Electric Lights Orchestra that I had to force the tape to play that section of music just to get it to record. That tape is not really playable in any player. I had to get it to play in the 4-track. And, you know, Max has brought this up to me before where he's like, I really like that you put your influences, you wear your influences on your sleeve. And I'm like, I'm not wearing my influences on my sleeve. I'm wearing my life on my sleeve.
Yep.
That music, that sort of ELO sample is not my influences as much as it's like, that's my life on my sleeve. That's my family and experience on my sleeve. And that's where that kind of comes from. If people don't like it or they want to interpret it as a simple music sample, that's okay. Like, that's up to them. But it does all have meaning, and that's where that kind of specific thing comes from. There's other things on the album that are deeply personal to me. They're maybe not as apparent, but the music influence, it definitely comes from, again, that tape trading culture that my dad was involved with, where not as much of like, here's original ideas as much as, here are these artists that I like. I hope you are into them as much as I am into them.
Could you kindly open about like this tape trade culture your father was in?
My dad was a DJ.
Really?
Yeah, he was a DJ just around the college scene. He's not like a music obsessive or anything. He actually,
Well, he has to be in some sort of
way,
if
but
he was DJ.
he was very quick to abandon cassettes and CDs for Spotify and all that. But he was at one point in time. He's very obsessive. He's turned me on. He's the reason I do music and make stuff. And, you know, both. I mean, I'll say both of my parents are very, like, they're very supportive of it. But it was my dad's stuff that really pushed me forward because he had a friend. I never knew the friend's name. He just went by the initials DC, and DC was a guy he traded tapes with all the time, that even as my dad has become an old man who doesn't want to keep any physical media around, if he sees a mixtape with the name DC around it, he's like, please keep that for me. I found a few tapes recently where he was like, you need to give those to me. Like, I can't dub other tapes on that. I'm gonna give them back to him, which I think to me is very influential in the fact that it's shown like the staying power that a physical thing like a cassette can give. And just music swapping in general from him has become like very, very important.
you have so far 2 CDs,
Yes.
Plus
bunch of tapes.
amount of.
But how you rate
pretty fucking
a
good
CD? Is CD more valuable than some other stuff?
Because your first CD is like high regarded.
Yeah, the CD's high regarded. The CD's interesting in that, like, I think I know the one you're talking about, the abandoned CD.
Yeah.
Where it was very much like every idea is going to be pushed forward into this tape.
Yeah.
And I'm going to make something like this is. I guess I wanted to make what you could call a definitive statement, and I made it, and I'm okay with it. But I guess the CD and the tapes are very different in that, like, I like the idea of an artist who has many different interpretations of their work. Like, maybe, and I understand I make it difficult for people abroad, and I'm giving my effort to not make it difficult, where maybe the limited run tapes, not everyone's getting them, and they're in very small editions, and like, not everything's able to be followed easily. So I think the CDs are more of like, hey, if you wanted to check in on me in the last 3 years, here's what I've been doing. And then the next CD will be like a culmination of the next couple of years after that. Whereas the tapes are more of like, here's a manifestation of the week or the month. Or
You probably don't understand the hype of that you get on your first CD.
I don't.
Yeah, what we was talking about like a week ago, like people are really expecting your show here because like the first CD, it sold out like in few days. From you, from Wilho, from like everyone. I mean, the quality is like superb.
No, I don't expect anything.
Yeah, you don't expect it, but you.
I guess the most notable example would be like Miko's raving of the disc about a year ago.
Yeah.
Maybe my example is like, because I'm a bit of, ever since I was a teenager, I've been a bit of like a bit of a devilish antagonist of like, oh, you guys like this? Get ready for
Serve you the one that you deserve.
Get ready for get ready for this thing that
Fuck
he's gonna
you.
pay. Yeah, get ready for the fuck you kind of thing. But it is really something that I guess, like, I understand that disc, like, people really like it, but I guess anyone who's listening, like, the stuff that comes after it is good. It's good stuff, and the new disc, all musical criticisms aside, it's good. And I'll continue making stuff, and there's stuff coming that I think will be a little more noisier than these musical inclined discs.
Noisecast.